On February 3, 2025, a significant upheaval unfolded at the U.S. Agency for International Development USAID following an unexpected announcement by billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk stating that he and President Donald Trump had agreed to disband the agency. This decision sent shockwaves through the organization and raised alarm among its employees who received an email instructing them to stay away from the USAID headquarters in Washington, D.C. The building was cordoned off with police tape and many employees reported being locked out of their computer systems. The email sent to staff indicated that the closure was at the direction of agency leadership and the headquarters would be closed to personnel. Reports surfaced that over 600 employees were unable to access their workstations, further compounding the chaos. The agency's website, which provides critical information about its global humanitarian and development programs, also went offline without any explanation over the weekend, leading to concerns about the continuity of operations at one of the world's largest providers of humanitarian aid. Musk's announcement came during a live session on the social media platform X Spaces, where he described USAID as a ball of worms that needed to be completely eliminated, asserting that it was beyond repair. This dramatic move aligns with the broader changes initiated by the Trump administration, which had already implemented significant layoffs and program terminations since Trump took office. The reaction from Democratic lawmakers was swift and intense, with many arguing that Trump lacked the constitutional authority to unilaterally close USAID without congressional approval. Concerns were raised about Musk's involvement in accessing sensitive government information, particularly after reports indicated that USAID's security chiefs had been placed on leave for refusing to comply with Musk's inspection teams. As the situation unfolded, two State Department employees attempting to gain access to the USAID offices were turned away by security personnel who informed them that while the offices were technically open, personnel were not permitted to enter. Uniformed Department of Homeland Security officers and security personnel were seen blocking the lobby of the USAID headquarters, further emphasizing the extraordinary nature of the situation. The developments at USAID reflect a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy, which has historically emphasized humanitarian assistance as a means of building alliances and countering adversaries like China and Russia. The Trump administration's actions, including a freeze on foreign assistance, have already led to widespread effects on programs around the globe, and the closure of USAID threatens to dismantle decades of established policy in the realm of international aid and development. Musk and Trump have long criticized USAID, accusing it of promoting liberal causes and inefficiency. Their collaboration through the Department of Government Efficiency (DOGE) has raised questions about the future of federal oversight and the role of private individuals in government decision-making. The extraordinary power wielded by Musk and his DOGE team has alarmed many within the federal government, leading to a growing backlash from lawmakers who fear for the integrity of public institutions. In summary, the events surrounding the closure of USAID illustrate a moment of profound change in U.S. governance, highlighting tensions between executive power and established institutional norms. The implications of privatized oversight by influential figures like Musk in federal operations raise critical questions about the future of U.S. foreign aid and its role in global humanitarian efforts. The fallout from this announcement is likely to reverberate for a long time, as lawmakers and civil society grapple with the ramifications of dismantling such a key agency. In the upheaval surrounding the closure of the U.S. Agency for International Development USAID, several counterintuitive aspects emerge from the events that transpired in early February 2025. 1. Influence of a private individual on government policy. It is particularly striking that a private individual, Elon Musk, wielded enough influence to prompt the disbanding of a long-standing government agency. Traditionally, government agencies like USAID operate under the purview of elected officials and established bureaucratic processes. The fact that a billionaire entrepreneur could announce the agency's closure in a casual social media setting showcases a significant shift in how power dynamics are perceived in governance. This undermines the notion that government policy is strictly the domain of elected officials and highlights how private wealth can dictate public policy. 2. The role of congressional authority. While Democratic lawmakers vocally protested the closure, arguing that President Trump lacked the constitutional authority to shut down USAID without congressional approval, the reality is that the Trump administration had already initiated widespread layoffs and program terminations at the agency. This indicates a broader trend where executive power is increasingly utilized to bypass traditional legislative checks. The counterintuitive element here is that despite the clear legal framework that should prevent such actions, the political climate allowed for this kind of unilateral decision-making, suggesting a weakening of institutional norms. 3. Reactions of the employees. The response from USAID staffers was also notable. Many employees found themselves locked out of their computer systems overnight, and despite the sudden closure, there were reports of them being able to access the agency to clear personal belongings before the police cordoned off the area. This juxtaposition of chaos and normalcy, where employees were simultaneously being instructed to stay away while also being able to retrieve personal items, reflects a breakdown in operational protocol. It contrasts sharply with the expected reaction in a typical governmental shutdown, where procedures are more structured and orderly. 4. The narrative of inefficiency. Musk's characterization of USAID as a ball of worms underscores a narrative that equates the agency with inefficiency and waste. However, USAID has historically been a vital component of U.S. foreign policy, providing humanitarian assistance worldwide. The counterintuitive aspect here lies in the fact that the very agency known for delivering aid and fostering international relations was being dismantled under the premise of inefficiency, despite the ongoing global crises that necessitate such aid. This raises questions about the values being prioritized in governance and the potential consequences of eliminating an agency that has long been instrumental in addressing humanitarian needs. 5. Broader implications for foreign policy. The closure of USAID represents a dramatic shift in U.S. foreign policy, particularly as it pertains to humanitarian aid. Traditionally, U.S. assistance has been a tool for building alliances and countering adversaries like China and Russia. The abrupt termination of such aid could alienate allies and diminish the U.S. influence on the global stage. The counterintuitive element here is that by dismantling an agency that serves as a cornerstone of American soft power, the administration may inadvertently be undermining its strategic interests abroad, contrary to the narrative of strengthening U.S. standing in global affairs. 6. Lawmakers' outrage versus political reality. While Democratic lawmakers expressed outrage over the shutdown and the implications of privatized oversight by figures like Musk, the political reality is that the Trump administration had already been implementing significant changes to federal operations. This dissonance highlights a counterintuitive situation where political outrage appears to be more performative than substantive. As the administration had been operating with considerable latitude in reshaping government agencies without immediate repercussions from Congress. In summary, the events surrounding the closure of USAID reveal a complex interplay of power dynamics, legal authority, and operational chaos, all underscored by the influence of private wealth on public policy. The situation illustrates a significant departure from established norms, with implications for governance and foreign policy that may not be immediately apparent but are profoundly impactful. The report detailing the closure of the U.S. Agency for International Development (USAID) following Elon Musk's announcement that he and President Trump agreed to disband the agency contains several critical points that many readers may overlook, yet they hold significant implications for U.S. governance, foreign policy, and the role of private individuals in public administration. 1. Executive power versus institutional norms. The most striking aspect of this incident is the apparent disregard for established procedures regarding the closure of a federal agency. The announcement of disbanding USAID raises constitutional questions about the extent of executive power. Democratic lawmakers' protests highlight the importance of congressional oversight in federal agency operations. The potential implications of bypassing these norms could set a dangerous precedent for future administrations, allowing for arbitrary closures or significant alterations to federal agencies without legislative approval. This could weaken institutional frameworks and accountability mechanisms that have been in place to protect public interests. 2. Role of Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency. Doge. Musk's involvement in federal oversight through Doge exemplifies a trend of privatization and delegation of government functions to private individuals. His characterization of USAID as a ball of worms needing total elimination reflects a broader narrative shared by some politicians that government agencies are inherently inefficient. This viewpoint overlooks the vital functions these agencies perform, particularly in global humanitarian efforts. The significant role of a private citizen in dismantling a major government agency raises ethical concerns regarding conflicts of interest, especially considering Musk's vast business interests that could be affected by U.S. foreign aid policies. The implications of such privatization extend beyond USAID, potentially influencing how other agencies are managed or evaluated in the future. 3. Impact on global humanitarian efforts. USAID is the world's largest provider of humanitarian assistance, and its closure could have dire consequences for international development and relief programs. The sudden cessation of aid could exacerbate crises in vulnerable regions, undermining U.S. foreign policy objectives that aim to build alliances and counter adversaries like China and Russia. The report mentions how the Trump administration's freeze on foreign assistance has already disrupted programs worldwide. The significance of this point lies in understanding the potential destabilization of regions that rely on U.S. aid, which could lead to increased geopolitical tensions and humanitarian crises that the U.S. would ultimately need to address. 4. Security and access to sensitive information. Another critical aspect is the reports of security chiefs at USAID being placed on leave for resisting Musk's inspection teams. This raises questions about the integrity and security of sensitive government information. The practice of allowing private individuals access to classified materials poses risks not just to national security but also to the privacy of individuals whose information may be mishandled. The precedent set by Musk's access to sensitive data could encourage similar actions by other private entities in the future, undermining the security protocols established to protect this information. 5. Public response and legislative action. The Democrats' outrage and calls for legislative intervention underscore the potential for a significant political backlash against the Trump administration's actions. This incident may galvanize lawmakers to push for more stringent regulations regarding executive power and the privatization of governmental functions. The response from Democratic lawmakers, including figures like Senator Elizabeth Warren, reflects a growing concern over the erosion of checks and balances within the U.S. government. The significance of public and legislative response to this incident could shape future governance practices and restore confidence in the institutional framework that oversees federal operations. 6. Public perception and trust in government. The chaos surrounding the closure of USAID could contribute to a growing public skepticism about the government's ability to function effectively. If citizens perceive that federal agencies can be dismantled at the whim of private individuals or through unilateral executive action, it could lead to a decline in trust in government institutions. This erosion of trust can have long-term consequences for civic engagement and public support for government initiatives, particularly those related to foreign aid and humanitarian efforts. In conclusion, while the report primarily details the logistical and operational chaos resulting from the closure of USAID, the underlying implications of this event are profound. It touches upon fundamental issues of governance, the role of private individuals in public administration, the future of U.S. foreign policy, and the potential erosion of institutional norms. Recognizing these overlooked elements is crucial for understanding the broader consequences of this unprecedented action and its impact on future governance in the United States. 1. Executive overreach and constitutional authority. The events surrounding the disbanding of USAID raise critical questions about the limits of executive power in the U.S. government. Democratic lawmakers have voiced concerns over President Trump's authority to shut down a federal agency without congressional approval. This situation highlights the tensions between the executive branch's powers and the legislative branch's role in overseeing government functions, particularly when it comes to significant policy shifts affecting domestic and international aid programs. Analyzing this aspect can lead to discussions about the checks and balances inherent in U.S. governance and the implications of bypassing established constitutional protocols. 2. Impact on U.S. foreign policy and humanitarian aid. The closure of USAID, the largest provider of humanitarian aid worldwide, signals a dramatic shift in U.S. foreign policy. Historically, USAID has played a crucial role in fostering international relations and addressing humanitarian crises, particularly in regions where U.S. interests are at stake. The Trump administration's decision to eliminate the agency, coupled with a freeze on foreign assistance, raises concerns about the long-term implications for global partnerships and the U.S.'s ability to respond to international crises. A thorough analysis of this shift could explore potential repercussions for U.S. diplomacy, global stability, and humanitarian efforts. 3. The role of private sector influence in government operations. Elon Musk's involvement in the decision to disband USAID through his Department of Government Efficiency (DOGE) illustrates the growing trend of private sector influence on public policy. Musk's characterization of the agency as a ball of worms and the subsequent actions taken by his teams raise questions about the appropriateness of private individuals exerting significant control over federal operations. This point invites discussion about the balance between innovation and accountability in government, the risks associated with privatized oversight, and how such influence might reshape the functions of federal agencies. 4. Employee experiences and institutional disruption. The immediate impact on USAID employees who were locked out of their systems and denied access to their workplace underscores the human cost of such a drastic governmental shift. The chaos described in the reports, including the physical presence of police and a sudden closure of the agency's operations, reflects a broader trend of instability within federal institutions during politically charged transitions. This aspect can be explored in terms of organizational culture, employee morale, and the psychological effects of abrupt policy changes on civil servants, emphasizing the often overlooked human elements in discussions of government restructuring. 1. The dismantling of the Works Progress Administration (WPA). During the Great Depression, the WPA was established in 1935 to provide jobs and support for the unemployed through public works projects. However, as the economy began to recover in the late 1930s, there was a growing sentiment among some politicians to disband the WPA, arguing it was no longer necessary. In 1943, the WPA was officially terminated, leading to significant protests from workers and communities that relied on its programs. The dismantling raised concerns about the loss of jobs and services during a critical period of recovery, paralleling the chaos and political backlash seen in the USAID scenario. 2. The closure of the Civilian Conservation Corps (CCC). The CCC was another New Deal program created in 1933 to provide jobs for young men and to carry out public works projects related to the conservation and development of natural resources. In 1942, as the U.S. entered World War II, the program was deemed unnecessary and was officially closed. The termination led to protests from participants and communities that benefited from the program's work. The abrupt end of the CCC reflects the tension between political decisions and the impact on federal employees and the public, similar to the situation surrounding USAID's closure. 3. The disbandment of the Office of Economic Opportunity (OEO). Established in 1964 as part of President Lyndon B. Johnson's War on Poverty, the OEO was responsible for various programs aimed at reducing poverty in the United States. However, during the Nixon administration, the OEO faced significant budget cuts and was ultimately abolished in 1981. This disbandment was controversial and garnered criticism from advocates who argued that the programs provided essential services to low-income populations. The political maneuvering and subsequent fallout from the OEO's closure echo the potential upheaval and political strife mirrored in the events surrounding USAID's disbandment. The recent upheaval surrounding the U.S. Agency for International Development USAID following Elon Musk's announcement of its disbandment marks a significant shift in U.S. governance and foreign policy. As the landscape of international aid and development changes, several future predictions can be made. 1. Impact on global humanitarian aid. The closure of USAID, historically the largest provider of humanitarian assistance globally, will likely lead to a vacuum in international aid efforts. Other nations or non-governmental organizations may step in to fill this gap, potentially altering global power dynamics. Countries like China and Russia could expand their influence by increasing their aid offerings, while U.S. allies may look for alternative partnerships. 2. Privatization of aid efforts. With Musk's emphasis on efficiency and privatization, we might see a trend toward privatized or corporate-driven aid models. This could lead to an increase in partnerships between the federal government and private firms, fundamentally changing how aid and development initiatives are structured and implemented. Companies may prioritize profit over humanitarian needs, raising ethical concerns. 3. Legislative and political backlash. The abrupt nature of USAID's closure without congressional approval is likely to spark a significant legal and political battle. Democratic lawmakers and advocacy groups may push back vigorously, leading to potential court challenges regarding the legality of disbanding a federal agency without legislative consent. This could result in a renewed focus on the balance of powers within the U.S. government. 4. Changes in U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. foreign policy landscape will undergo considerable transformation. Without USAID, the U.S. may shift toward a more transactional approach to international relations, focusing on direct economic interests rather than long-term development and humanitarian goals. This could alienate nations that have relied on U.S. aid, leading to increased tensions and a re-evaluation of alliances. 5. Humanitarian crises intensifying. As USAID's programs are dismantled, ongoing humanitarian crises in regions such as the Middle East, Africa, and Central America may worsen. The lack of U.S. support could exacerbate conditions in war-torn regions, leading to increased displacement and suffering. International organizations may struggle to fill the void, potentially leading to greater instability. 6. Increased influence of non-traditional actors. The void left by USAID could empower non-traditional actors, including faith-based organizations and grassroots movements, to take on larger roles in international aid. These groups may offer more localized and culturally sensitive solutions, but their capacity to address large-scale crises remains uncertain. 7. Technological innovations in aid delivery. Musk's involvement in government may encourage the adoption of cutting-edge technologies in aid delivery, such as blockchain for transparency, AI for needs assessment, and drones for logistics. While these innovations could enhance efficiency, they may also lead to further reliance on technology, which can be problematic in regions lacking infrastructure. 8. Public sentiment and activism. The disbandment of USAID could galvanize public sentiment against the administration's approach to humanitarian aid. Grassroots activism may rise, advocating for the reinstatement of USAID or the establishment of a new agency to ensure continued support for global development. This could lead to a broader dialogue about the role of government in humanitarian efforts. 9. International relations strain. The shutdown of USAID may strain U.S. relations with countries that have benefited from American aid. Nations may express resentment towards the U.S. for abandoning its commitments, leading to a decline in soft power and influence on the global stage. This could also affect negotiations on trade and security agreements. 10. Potential for re-establishment. If the backlash from the disbandment is significant, There may be a movement to re-establish a new agency focused on international aid that reflects contemporary values and priorities, possibly with a more bipartisan approach. Such a movement could arise from public demand for a return to traditional U.S. humanitarian leadership. In conclusion, the future of U.S. international aid and development is uncertain following the disbandment of USAID. The implications are far-reaching, affecting global humanitarian efforts, U.S. foreign policy, and domestic political dynamics. The unfolding scenario will be closely watched by policymakers, aid organizations, and international observers.